Welcome to the Curious Developer. I'm Jesper from KDAB. This year, Qt turns 30 years old, which makes me wonder, is Qt still relevant? Am I a dinosaur for still writing Qt widgets code? Is Qt ready for the future of AR and AI and anything else starting or containing an A? Well, fortunately, I had the luck of interviewing two people in this show for exactly these questions. Welcome, Volker and Maurice.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hilsheimer and Kalinowski, correct?
That's right. Yes.
You can choose whatever last name you want. I had the pleasure. Well, I will have the. Oh man, timeline is so difficult. Did you like time travel? Yesterday, my timeline, the future of the people watching this. I had the pleasure of talking to troll number 4. You know your numbers?
13. Lucky number 13.
Ah man, and you're like 257,000 something.
Well, Germany, 1 or 2. but I don't get the whole Trolltech combination yet.
So, when did you start with the Qt company?
I started in 2000 as a student intern in our, well, I was the support department at that time.
The support
department, yes.
Right, yeah, I remember a few emails forth and back on issues with...
What is this,
Wow.
malloc?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
I learned C++ in that job, yeah.
On the job learning, huh?
Yes, definitely.
That's so modern these days. You?
I started in Trolltech in 2006 when Trolltech decided to open a Berlin office.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So, any idea how much code is still around in Qt since 0.9 or whatever the first public release was 30 years ago?
Oh, that is a good question. It can't be that much, but I'm sure there is still something in QLCD number.
Oh, my favorite widgets of them all. It's like, oh, beautiful.
Certainly nothing in QString. We can be pretty sure about that.
Right. So QLCD number is, so does Qt run on alarm clocks these days? I mean, what would you use QLCD number for otherwise, right?
If you put it on an alarm clock, widgets might not be the tool of choice, but yeah.
Old style alarm clock, I guess. 30 years is a long time. I mean, back in 1995, we were not Googling, we were altavistering, whatever it's called. Yahoo! Exclamation mark was the big thing. And still, Qt is around with, I don't think if Yahoo and AltaVista is around anymore. What is the secret sauce to that success?
iteration. So, I mean, Qt started as a cross-platform UI framework. At the same time, we've been like bringing in so much more value, so much more benefits over times. We've always taken care of the cross-platform story still. Like we see all the platforms evolving these days, Windows on ARM, Apple moving Mac, etc., etc. I mean, that's our core promise and we still take care of it. So it's still a very valid message and benefit we're bringing out.
Yeah, it's a timeless problem. And adaptability, we learned about that yesterday here at the show from Chris Barton. Adaptability is important, so yeah.
That's not one of those values written on the wall in the Trolltech, I mean Nokia, I mean come on. I mean the Qt company building the gigantic wall of letters, adaptability. You learned that yesterday. Okay, that's fair enough. Gotta learn it at some point.
Well, it's part of our DNA even without it being written on the wall, I suppose, yes.
Fair enough. So, here in Munich, and for those of you that doesn't know, I'm sitting here in Munich at Qt World Summit 2025 with these fine gentlemen, and here in Munich, exactly 15 years ago, the message was, and that's when they'll zoom in on my face saying, "The king is dead, long live the king." And the king obviously was Qt Widgets back then, and long live the king was Qt Quick, QML, Declarative Qt, whatever you call that baby by now. Still, there are dinosaurs out there. There's even a guy I know that has done 150 episodes on Qt Widgets and more. Why can't you kill that bastard? And what is your stance on Qt Widgets these days?
So it's not dead.
That's for sure.
people still write interesting programs and products with Qt widgets. Our stance is do that if Qt widgets is the tool of choice for your product, if it's solving the problems that you are having in the best possible way. Yeah. And that might just be because you are much more comfortable with writing C++ than with building a solution out of multiple technologies, which I have a lot of respect for. So our strategy, and we talked about that already at the last Qt World Summit, is we don't want you to feel that you have to make that choice. If you feel that widgets is a solution to your problem, and maybe also Qt Quick is a solution to another aspect of your problem, feel free to combine those two. Feel free to continue to work with the technologies that you're comfortable with. We invite you to, of course, explore what we are doing, and we haven't made it a secret that we believe that Qt Quick and the Qt Quick technology stack is the future, has a lot more potential, gives us a lot more flexibility and a lot more capabilities, also in terms of performance and hardware acceleration. We invite you to explore it, but that doesn't mean that you have to forget everything that you have learned or throw away everything that you have built.
So back in the days, in Qt Quick 1 times, there was this Qt graphics view backend, and there was a Qt Quick whatever adapter, I'm sure it's called something fancy, class where I could have widgets inside my QML scenes, and that looked weird, but we could do it, and we could have a QML scene as a widget in widgets, obviously. How do you see that story these days of mixed application? Is that just old men like me that could be tempted at doing that, or is it actually done in the market?
Hybrid UI is what we call it, both in terms of mixing widgets and Qt Quick, even though there are some technical complexities that we still have to figure out. But in particular also bringing native technologies, native UI features and capabilities and components into your widgets or Qt Quick stack. So being able to merge and mix these different tools is a key promise of ours, that we make sure that you don't have to commit yourself to a single stack. One of the reasons why the widget stack is so complicated and so big, also in terms just of deployment to a device, is because we did all these things. We put QGraphics widget into the graphics stack, so actually widgets and graphics view are almost two separate widget or UI frameworks. And of course that comes with a cost, that comes with a lot of complexity, that comes with a lot of overhead. And that was one of the reasons why we decided at some point to say, okay, Qt Quick actually needs to be a widget independent framework. We can't bring all of that with us. It doesn't really scale. Right. So there is a lot of stuff in widgets that maybe is not so timeless as the problem itself.
And I would wish this was Flow TV, because then I could just say, and to the viewers who just entered now, you're watching The Curious Developer, which is me, so I can ask any questions, even though I might or should have known them. So the next question here is, Qt Quick controls, where are we today? Is that, I mean, I remember at least back when Qt Quick 1 was around, we did, if I wanted a push button, I had to draw a rectangle and put text into it and a mouse area, and then came Qt Quick controls. But I mean, in terms of adaptability, in terms of tailoring it to my need, I mean, if I am sitting there with a Q push button and I want to be able to move my cursor on top of it in infinite sign and it should play Jingle Bell for me, that is super easy for me to do with a bit of event filters and whatnot. How far can I go with Qt Quick controls these days?
I think Qt Quick controls is pretty competitive compared to Qt widgets in terms of feature scope. We have almost all the things in there that are also in widgets. Some of the things that are in widgets maybe are not that relevant anymore, so we haven't prioritized them. But
QLCD numbers not there?
For example, that is something that you would rather do with your own rectangles, yes. It gives you a leg up if you want to have ready-made controls that have the semantics and the UI composition tightly coupled. It, of course, removes a certain amount of flexibility, even though the styling infrastructure gives you also a lot of power to do what you want to do. It has the advantage of being styled, of having certain concepts that the low-level Qt Quick framework does not have. Integration into your desktop environment, for instance, is better or more comprehensively done in Qt Quick controls. And also the component portfolio, let's say, again, is pretty comprehensive at this point.
So you mentioned styling there. That's, at least up until now, was two complete separate ways of doing it with widgets and with QML. And if I want to integrate those two, will I still have my Qt widget look kind of weird in my QML scenes, or are you working on something there? That was the leading question.
So in widgets, the traditional focus has always been to try to make that as pixel perfect to the native style as we can. That's been a lot of effort, and we have of course also things like the Fusion style and Qt style sheets as a tool to customize your own style. Twitch. Very frequently used and loved by many people, but also if you look honestly under the hood, then the performance implications, for instance, and the amount of hacks that are going into that stack are not pretty. On the Qt Quick control side, the native styles are there, so you also can achieve native look and feel, which, if we are honest, is perhaps not that much of a priority these days anymore. If you look at applications that you run also on your desktop, brands try to rather make their application look like their brand. And that is something that is not easily done with either of the two solutions. Qt Quick Controls gives you a very flexible framework to really build the UI up from the scratch. On the widget side, you end up either with a style sheet kind of approach or with writing a style in C++, which is not an easy task. No. So we are trying to look now into unifying those two worlds and try to see what are the important aspects of a style. And one of the things that the industry has moved towards, not just computer science or programming industry, but in general is design systems, where all of these aspects that make a brand, that make a design, are really attributes and expressed as attributes. Colors, fonts, the rounding radius of your rectangles, certain aspects of animation, for instance. And these are not logic, these are really just values. They might be dynamically changing values that adapt to certain state of your UI, but by and large, it's not as complex a problem as deciding whether your button is text inside of a rectangle, which it most likely will be, and you don't have to start from that level. You can say, okay, I have a rectangle, I have text. I can set the properties of those things. And that is something that allows us to bring these worlds together. Work in progress, still some research going on, how we make this efficient and effective and easy to use and toolable. Neither Qt Quick styles today, or Qt Quick control styles, nor widget styles are toolable for a designer, for instance, to be really involved and not have to hand over some design document to the developer.
Fair enough. So, last question here, I promise, on widget and QML. It's like, we had this show many years ago by now. It's like in the days of Corona, I think, where Qt Desktop Days or something like that, an online show, where I can't remember his name, but he showed a very interesting desktop application written entirely in QML. Where are we with that these days? Does that require magic superpowers, or is it as easy as doing widgets for the desktop?
I don't think it's a problem at all. I mean, we have quite many reference cases also when it comes to like desktop and also mobile application. Yeah. Let's not forget about mobile. It's there. Yeah. So yes, I mean, just like Volker said, building up upon that when it comes to the branding, efficiency, etc. with Qt Quick, that's there, and absolutely that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Many of our examples these days are written in Qt Quick, also for the desktop UI. Again, the question, I think, it's the wrong question to ask, because the problem is not, is it Qt Quick or not? It's really the problem of, is it easy for people to start using QML, to start mixing languages, mixing technologies? That's something we want to improve. But I think in terms of widgets or in terms of UI framework, using Qt Quick is just much easier than using widgets. Unless you are a seasoned widget developer and enjoy your imperative C++ programming. If you come from a declarative mindset and want to use the tools, then Qt Quick gives you a lot of legs up.
I am, as I said, here in Munich, Qt World Summer 2025. And at this time when you watch this, you likely already watched these two gentlemen on stage. But in my timeline again, it is in the future. So please forgive me if I ask a question you already answered in the audience and given a lot of thought to. So when I ask you for your slides for this presentation, I did not get any. I got a few bullet points on one of them, and let me just read it up here. It says, hardware accelerated 2D painting based on RHI for high frequency data visualization, but potentially also backend for QPaint engine. And that made me like, ooh, that's widgets again. I said I wouldn't talk more about widgets, didn't I?
Well, he gave you that opening.
Can you give me a very high level for those that didn't have time to watch your presentation, but obviously is watching this?
So creating visualizations using hardware accelerated technology is a complex undertaking, working with a scene graph API, which basically OpenGL and everything else that we have in terms of hardware accelerated APIs means that you need to turn your data points and the things that you want to draw into some form of sequence of triangles, which comes with a lot of math, and that is not someone's... most people are not quite familiar or able
That's
to
a
do this
Qt
kind of
company problem, not a my problem, right?
Exactly. Now in Qt Quick and with the Qt Quick framework, we give you a lot of components that allow you to assemble a UI. But in that case, you are doing a lot of work creating those instances of a rectangle, of a shape. So we can give you something like an arc or a curve or something like that, or a Bezier, but still that means instantiating objects, and that is of course coming with a significant amount of overhead. Certain problems are easier thought about as an imperative painting problem, where you say I need to draw a line from this point to this point, and I do this every frame again and again and again because my data changes. If you, for instance, show some sort of oscillograph or ECG or whatever, you have throwaway frames. You don't want to assemble a data structure that represents your UI. So the QPainter approach conceptually fits the problem much better. And also for most people, I think it is easier to think about drawing in those terms than assembling geometry. And that is exactly the problem we want to solve. While Qt Quick and the scene graph and the primitives we give you are very suitable for your mostly static, even though it can be very animated UI, where you transform existing geometry, these throwaway frames are much easier solved with an imperative painting approach, and that's what we are bringing now to the Qt Quick scene graph world, that you have a painter-like API that you can use to generate these throwaway frames that will be hardware accelerated, where you don't have to worry about the triangulations, the various aspects of drawing a line, caps and joints and so forth. These are very complicated problems to do the math right for, especially if you want to still have zoomability, for instance, and these kind of features. So that's what's coming now, what's being worked on for use cases like data visualization. And ultimately, the problems we are solving there will give us something very similar to QPainter. In terms of capabilities, there will be a couple of drawbacks, but then some of these features in QPainter that we maybe won't manage to support are not that frequently used, in particular in a widget world. Certain fill patterns. Some of this smells a bit like Windows 95. And to some degree, that's where it comes from. So if we say, okay, if we can live with the fact that we don't have all these features supported in this new hardware accelerated QPainter-like API, can we actually implement QPainter, which has this paint engine abstraction? Can we implement QPainter through that? That is still something we need to figure out ourselves. I'm carefully optimistic that we can do this. I don't want to make any promises, but if we can pull it off, then we might end up with a situation where we actually bring something like the old Qt OpenGL paint engine back into the Qt stack so that you can run your widget stack on top of RHI as a hardware accelerated UI framework, which solves a lot of problems that especially customers that have an existing Qt widgets code base have. When they want to render this on a 4K display or on an embedded device that has battery drainage problems because everything is running on the CPU, that gives Qt widgets definitely another boost of life, even if we are not necessarily investing a lot into new widget functionality. But at least the existing widget UIs will be benefiting from this significantly.
So you'll be back here in 10 years and talk about Qt widgets versus QML with me again.
It's a timeless problem, as we said, right?
Over the years, various attempts have been made on integrating Qt with other languages than just C++. I remember the good old days with Jambi, and that wasn't that successful, but I actually, preparing for this talk here, I looked it up, and Jambi is still alive, it seems. So something just doesn't want to die, huh? Like said the widget guy that just continued talking about widget. Anyway, so we have these days C++ as a first tier language, if you can use that language about that. We have Python with PyQt, and there is a contestant at least for the Rust space, CXX Qt. So can you tell me a bit about where you see Rust in your future, and how does Qt relate to Rust? And is it a threat? Is it a possibility? How do you see it?
Yeah. So Rust overall is getting quite some awareness, naturally. Yeah. I mean, we don't need to talk about all the security-related aspects Rust is bringing in, etc. So clearly it's on our radar. The thing is, these days, you're selecting programming languages based on your needs. And Rust certainly is bringing benefits. Qt being traditionally and always will be likely a C++ framework, that still means how do you bring the technologies together. And CXX Qt, for instance, is a very good example and a brilliant showcase of you have a Qt-based solution and now you want to like incorporate additional Rust items into your stack. It's perfectly suited for that. Yeah. When we talk about Qt for Python and PySide, etc., the approach there has been that we create a one-to-one matching of the Qt APIs towards a different language, which is convenient if you know Qt. But if you, for instance, select Rust, you already have lots and lots of functionality from the language, from the packages, cargo, etc. coming in, which you wouldn't necessarily need from Qt then again.
Right.
So why not make that interface much slimmer and cleaner in that respect, utilizing Qt Quick, for instance, as the UI stack when it comes to the front end, and using the programming language of your choice for the back-end related parts with the benefits of the language. And that is basically where we see ourselves currently being moving to, now that we announced Qt Bridges as well. How do you really decouple back-end, front-end, Qt Quick as the UI technology, and then basically the programming languages of your choice. And
I think you are onto something there. I mean, I remember in the Jambi days that I was writing the training material for Qt back then, and we wanted to make a Jambi version, and I just needed a few LaTeX macros to change minus greater than to a dot, because in Java it's dot, but that was literally C++ written in Java, and no beep, that the Java developers looking at this like, that's just weird. Yeah. So, but let me, yes, JP yesterday announced to us in his presentation, yesterday, my timeline again, that there was this new Qt bridge. I'd like to understand that a bit better. So, as I see it, we have on the QML side, we have something that needs backing from, say, Python, Rust, or Cobol 60, or whatever language you're going to support there. Oh, you said no Cobol 60.
Is there a more modern version of Cobol? I haven't kept up, I have to admit.
61. I'm sure it's just like LaTeX again, that's just one digit more in its versioning numbers or something like that. So, but I have something that in the C++ world, I have a QObject class that has signals and has invocables and whatnot. And I assume that same concept is going to be available in these new languages.
Not necessarily, and the background basically is what's your starting point as well. I mean, if you start to create a Qt application, then we own the event loop, everything, etc., and then you're embedding other parts to Qt. But Qt Bridges is about, and just like for Qt Quick for Android, which we have been doing previously as well, is what happens if you are a native developer on something else, but want to get the benefits of Qt Quick. High-level APIs like Qt graphs, visualizations, etc., etc. So that is a completely different use case, as the starting point is a different one.
Okay.
And then the question is, if you want to look into, I want to have a brilliant UI stack, which we believe Qt Quick is, do you need to know what QObject is? Because you're coming from a completely different world, you want to utilize Qt Quick as the UI technology, you really need to understand everything which is underneath. Clearly there's value and benefits of using that, but it's not the starting point anymore for a developer coming from the other side.
But my question is, I have some business logic written in Rust. I want that variable that says 10 up there to be shown in my rectangle with a text inside or whatever, and it should say 10 there. So I have a property binding on the QML side. What is the bridge? I mean, that's my understanding, that at least in C++ world, our bridge to that world is the QObject that has all that stuff. So how am I going to bridge that in Rust or other languages?
And that is exactly what is at the heart of this strategy now, that we say we want to make Qt Quick as a UI framework available to any language runtime. This data transfer, this data integration layer, that is exactly the technical problem that we are solving. So how do we make the data in your idiomatically written Rust or Python or Swift or C#, whatever,
Cobalt 60.
backend, Cobalt 60. How do we make that data available to the Qt Quick UI? And ideally, of course, in both ways, because when the user ultimately types into your line edit that has your number in it and corrects or improves or fixes it, changes it in any way, then you want to have that data also transferred and mapped correctly back to the backend. So there is a lot of work around QAbstarctItemModel as one of the interfaces from the C++ side that we have. How do we represent that in Rust, in Swift? And to be fair, how can we also make that easier for C++ developers that don't want to necessarily write their C++ code with always having to have Qt in mind and having to be familiar with the Qt abstractions and so forth. So how can we make that data transfer, that data mapping in such a way that you can still work with the data on your backend side in as natural a way as possible. So if you change your data in the Rust level or in the Python side, the changes are also reflected back to the UI. So there is different language runtimes give us different capabilities. In Python, we can actually hook into the Python runtime. In Rust as a system programming language, or in C++, we don't have that. We can't intercept calls that modify your stat vector or your array or whatever. But can we give people good tools to make it feel native, make it feel natural that you work with the data structures on the native side, in the backend side, and the UI sits on top. So that's the problem that we try to solve, and we have a couple of very good ideas, I think, around that for the different languages, and have done some research and really try to understand what does it take. But that's ultimately that's the technical manifestation of that product.
Can I first of all say thank you very much. It was a brilliant piece of work that you did there with QAbstarctItemModel. It is so very consultant friendly.
Creating jobs and job security, yes. Apropos widgets.
And now you brought up AbstractItemModel yourself. Does that mean that future generations of QML developers do not need to understand what is a QModelIndex and the whole level of problem that you have in the Qt widget? Not talking about Qt widget, but it came from Qt widget background. It was dragged into QML. You sit there, all you want to do is to create a simple list of things back from C++, and you need to understand role and indexes and possibly proxy model and all of these things. Are you going to change that, or is that going to be the same? And the follow-up question to that, how are you, I remember back when Jambi, again, one of the key thing that killed Jambi was that back then it was in the release days of Qt 4. We had a QList view, Qtable view, Qtree view, and they ask a lot of questions. And they continue asking the same question that went through the JNI bridge to Java and killed performance entirely if you wanted to implement your models in Java. How do you solve those problems, or is that not even on your radar yet?
So 6.10 is homing in on the feature freeze in a couple of weeks. In 6.10 we will have an implementation of QAbstarctItemModel that actually removes all of that complexity for you as a C++ developer. You will be able to expose any C++ range to anything that can consume QAbstarctItemModel without having to deal with model index, role, implementing your own virtual functions, and so forth. The downside is that you need to understand C++ ranges and iterators, and of course, to some degree, you get that for free because the language, the standard libraries that come with the C++ language today give us a much bigger toolbox than what we had back in the Qt 4 days. How that is going to look like for somebody who is a Java developer or a Swift developer, I'm very confident that we won't be exposing developers in these languages to something that is looking like a QModelIndex. And ideally we don't
even have that in Jambi, QModelIndex on the Java side.
So I hope we can hide this. I hope we can hide this at least for the basic use cases. If you like you say, you have a list of stuff, you want to show this in the UI, and ideally changes in the UI that the user is making are brought back into the backend. For lists, we don't need QModelIndex. For trees, the situation becomes a bit more interesting because we need to have the back referencing between parent and child nodes and so forth. So we need to find a good way of modeling that there. But if we just accept that we don't need to support any possible data structure that QAbstractItemModel can represent, a tree of tables or a table of tables, these are not data structures that typically are part of your data structures, and you won't be able to represent them visually anyway, unless you have some sort of 3D display, 3D chess. But if you say, okay, within a slightly reduced scope of capabilities, we can give you a much better abstraction, much easier abstraction. I hope we can manage that for other languages as well, but like I mentioned, for C++ in 6.10, we have something already merged now into the dev branch. We will discuss that in the next couple of days, our timeline in the contributor summit as well, to see if we have made the right choices there, but I'm optimistic that we can come up with a similar simplification for other languages.
2025, just remember you heard it here on the Curious Developer first. Next generation abstract item model is finally here. It's been promised for 20 years by now?
It is an implementation of QAbstractItemModel, so underneath it's still the same thing. We just remove all the boilerplate from you.
Many years ago, Bogdan Vatra brought Qt to Android. I'm wondering, what is the plan for Android and iOS these days? Are they dead, or is it still kicking, and will my next car be driving Qt with Android?
You want to take that one?
I can take it on. We're not dodging, we're just wondering who's going to answer. Absolutely. I mean, just before we've been discussing like Qt Quick for Android. Naturally, the Android platform is evolving a lot. Yeah. We see quite some traction of Android generally in Android automotive, but also other sectors, and also like geographically everywhere. So now it just feels natural for us to continue support, even build up upon that, like for instance with Qt Quick for Android. Integration into the language, integration into the tools, etc. We have Android Studio integration now for Qt Quick development as well. And on the iOS side, it's basically the same message, even though iOS and macOS are like more converging together to a platform, I would say long term. So naturally, this is a tier 1, class 1 citizen for us as well.
Yeah. So I remember back in the days, the reason why you would want to do Qt on Android to start with was that, hey, if you have all these Qt developers and you have your backend data and whatnot, and you've written it on desktop and you just want a thingy on your phone that can access that, then rather than go out and get yourself a bunch of Android people and they won't talk to the Qt people and whatnot, you'll just do it with Qt. Yeah. Is that the storyline still, or am I supposed these days to actually write my complete Android application with Qt?
Absolutely possible, and the regular case of that is how we call it companion app. So I mean, we've had a couple of keynotes this show as well when it comes to, you could say, embedded devices, cooking devices, cars, etc., etc. But all these come with a companion app to have a more, let's say, emotional relationship with the consumer, right? So the app checks for you what's going on there, and then you can utilize the very same assets, brandings, developers as well to basically implement a companion app, and that is absolutely possible. Admittedly, if you were only to target an Android application, then it might be a bit questionable whether Qt is like the perfect match. But this is really about scale. Going cross-platform, going from embedded to desktop to mobile, having that supported via one unified work stream and developer flow, basically.
That's cool. That means that my understanding is still valid, so I don't need to update my thinking right there. The integration in Qt AI Assistant, obviously, it needed to talk to different vendors of AI services or different models and so on. And obviously, they had different different APIs to talk to. And that seems like a story that I've heard before. You had different operating systems, different whatever. It feels like a soft spot where Qt would fit in to do that. Is that on the roadmap for you guys to be sitting in there, being the not cross-platform, but cross-AI?
We don't have it like fixed on the roadmap, but it feels natural to at least look into that and do some research. And yes, that is happening. We also here at the event have been like talking about what we call inference API, like a Qt module when it comes to edge AI solutions, where you might have different well, LLMs, etc., on the device. On the more skeptical side, there was a very similar discussion back when whole cloud native started as a discussion. And I was like, well, in this region we need to use Azure, AWS, whatever. In this region we need another vendor. And Qt being like the binding things of cross-platform, shouldn't you do cross-cloud? And we did the research back then as well on that one and figured out...
It was a release, a product.
But that was actually us trying to get into that field, which, but we also figured those are so fast-moving things that having a compatibility layer in between is just impossible for us. And as AI is also like moving so rapidly fast, there is the same concern or consideration, like could we actually create something which is still of value in half a year when you bring it out, because all the AI methodologies, etc., have changed and evolved already since until then.
Also in that industry, things like model context protocol, for instance, are bringing a certain amount of standardization, maybe on a higher abstraction level, but at least interface discovery, agent discovery. I think the industry itself is quite aware that they need to provide a reasonably standardized infrastructure to integrate agentic AI into each other. So I think Eirik Ovitsland's presentation yesterday, he made that joke frequently, like we do what the Qt way is, we invent our own. I think in that case we might not want to do that.
Not invented here. Yeah, when will the Qt generative AI engine come out?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, and that is one of those things. If you need to go for the greatest common denominator, then it is going to be watered out and not that. And
Exactly.
So, but I like your observation that these giants with their gigantic egos, that they will find the common way. I doubt that, but let that just be here on camera. So
I won't put any money on the table there.
And now that you promised to be back here with me in 10 years to talk about widgets and QML, maybe I can get your prediction for that 10-year anniversary video show of this show here on where do you see Qt and AI go? Are we looking into a future in just a few years where I will be sitting there at the bar or the toilet, depending on my preferences, and drawing something and just show it to the camera and it'll spit out QML and backend models and whatnot, or where are we there?
I think the question to answer or to think about before is, where does computing go in the next couple of years? How do end users want, and how will they interact with devices, with computing? Will this idea of a touch screen go away? Will people no longer have physical interaction with computing, but rather, voice assistants? I mean, we had glimpses into that future, not only from Hollywood, but also with home assistants already today. Gesture-based interaction with computing and so forth. All of that is already theoretically possible. The real question is, will users want to have that as part of their lives? In cars, in daily interaction with industrial devices, as well as in productivity environments where you write your documents. Will you dictate them in the future? I mean, we had voice dictation for many years, and it has never really found broad acceptance. And I think that's where Qt will have to be. If the user interface becomes text and speech and audio, that is a problem that we are not solving today. And the problems that we do solve today will no longer be that dominant. So I think that's going to be a very interesting future for us if all of that goes away, all this graphical user interface problem goes away. I don't know. In terms of UI creation, I think that will be a representation of that as well. If we no longer have graphical user interfaces, drawing them on a napkin and showing them to the camera is fun, but maybe not necessary. But describing rather the flows in a way that the computer can generate software around it and can generate the implementation, that is definitely going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of weed that Pepper is smoking, but I'm sure it's not allowed many places, because he was like envisioning, to me, I'm sure it was just a joke to pull my leg for this interview, but he was envisioning a future where you wouldn't even create your own user interface. You would be just describing it, and then an AI would, depending on the user, and his preference is show the UI in different ways. Like that's going to be interesting to test and debug. Like I couldn't find the button. Oh,
but you're bringing up a really good point, and that's like the super personalization.
So you are with Pepe on pulling my leg here, huh?
Certainly it's going to happen. I mean, just check your mobile today. When you're going to work, it gives you a different representation when you're at home in the evening, etc. I actually had one customer discussion, and we were like going into the same direction, and was like, personalization is great because I like line charts, my colleague likes bar charts, but we want to have the same application knowing who is watching it, and then it does that for us. So this is going to happen more and more, in my opinion as well, but it's going to get way more dynamic, more based on user preference, personalization, etc. And but also, like, let's see how that one is going to work out in a professional environment as well.
I envision the future of smartphones there. It's like, I'm looking at a bar chart. Oh, look at this, and then this flips over, and there's going to be fancy animations, obviously, going from bar to line chart there. So, 15 years ago, or something in that order of magnitude, good friend of mine, Matthias Etrick, I'm sure you know that character too. He came and said, "We are going to make an IDE." I was like, dude. We're back to the smoking, something not legal in most places. Like, we have Eclipse, we have Emacs, we have VI, and IDE. The world do not need another IDE. And I'm glad that I'm not doing my software development with Eclipse or Emacs for that matter these days. So thank you for that visionary view into the future. But the kids these days, they don't use Qt Creator. They use Visual Studio Code. What's your priorities in respect to making Qt feel as native in Visual Studio Code as other toolkits does?
So I think generally Qt Creator has a very valid point still. We recognize quite often, like, if you have a distributed developer team across various platforms, or you need to work on Mac, Windows, Linux, etc., you want to have a workflow which works for you from a Qt perspective as well, having the QML profiler and all like these additional assets in there. So that's the use case for Qt Creator. But I completely agree, VS Code is getting a lot of traction. I mean, it's the market dominant player right now. So yes, we've just been a couple of months, no, actually since quite some time now, we do have the VS Code plugin, where we also have integrated a QML language server to get all the benefits in that respect, and we're updating that on a frequent level. Naturally, we're currently looking into, with the latest Microsoft announcements, because of all the various VS Code variances and how the plugin ecosystem now works, but we have it on the radar and also will aim to fix that.
At this event, we are honored to have Bjarne Stroustrup. And he's going to give a presentation in both of our futures, but in contrast to you guys, I saw his slides already, and he's going to talk a bit about modern C++. Qt still have naked pointers. Qt still do not have exceptions. Heck, I can't even do import Qt. Where are we in the scope of modern C++?
So,
and you're not going to dodge that one.
No, that's fine. Tempting. I didn't know that was an option, but we want you as the user of Qt to be able to use as modern C++ as you're comfortable with. C++ 20, 23. I think personally, we in the Qt project should write more of our tests and our examples and show how to use modern C++ concepts together with Qt. Qt itself is not going to move nearly as fast as our users will be able to move, because we have to take care of an entire ecosystem. So there are tool chains out there and platforms out there where even C++ 17 is a challenge. So we want to respect that, while at the same time make it possible for people to use modern C++. Things that make C++ safer, smart pointers. I don't know if exceptions is a great example of making C++ safer, but modern error handling, for instance, and like with C++ 23 and stood expected, modern error handling without exceptions, or at least with a language level feature almost that is not tied to exceptions. Seems like the right approach and something we would like to adopt as well. But yeah, again, people that are using Qt should be able to use modern C++, should not be tied to unsafe constructs, like you mentioned, naked pointers. There have been discussions around, should we have like a make child API to QObject so that you can construct children that are implicitly owned, for instance, so that you don't have to pass naked pointers around. There are small things that I'm sure we can do to make that feel less unnatural.
But it's also it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. I mean, you guys told me that you are old enough to remember the good old days of Qt 3 to Qt 4, and I mean that again was very consultant friendly. But I mean we are blessed these days with Jasmine his vision of a modern API, and I mean I have been many times referring to the good old Q slider with 4 numbers and sitting there, it's like which is the page step and which is the current value and so on. So these changes are good for the future, but hurts in the presence. And I mean, C++, Qt is bound to C++ 17 in just a few days to the user's timeline. It will be C++ 26 that is the current standard. I mean, then you'll be 3 major versions of C++ behind. So what are your thoughts on how you keep up and don't risk that other toolkits and technologies are running away from you because that you are stuck with being compatible to the old world?
I want to reiterate what Volker just said, because we are not keeping our users, the developers, stuck on C++ 17. It's a limitation for us internally, absolutely. Right. But again, there is, because Qt has such a vast platform support, various platforms where C++ 17 is just the latest thing. So it's a stretch for us, but just want to make clear, it's not a stretch for the developers out there.
And also, when you say in a couple of days, in some timeline, C++ 26 will be finalized, that is still a far cry from it's actually available and meaningfully usable. Even today, I think I tried that out a couple of weeks ago. I didn't find a single C++ 23 compiler on Compiler Explorer that had a std mdspan implementation. So even C++ 23 is not fully implemented yet in the broadly available toolchain. So just because there is an ISO certified paper somewhere describing the next standard before things can be in production, it's a long time. C++ 20 now is in practice usable out there. The compilers are able to, by and large, understand that language on the major platforms. So we are not that far behind. In practice, I think in terms of usable standards, we are 1 version behind. I think that's quite acceptable. And if we can also add new APIs to Qt that can be better, if you have a C++ 23, for instance, compliant compiler that supports those respective features, then we can do that as long as we have that as a header-only solution. You mentioned, for instance, import Qt modules. I think there have to be several more C++ standard releases with bug fixes to that infrastructure before it's also usable. And again, this is evolving. We learn together with the community and with the C++ standard committee what works, what doesn't work, what can we start rolling out.
Final thing, we have talked on one of the A's, AI, and the other one is AR. That's, I mean, these days, I cannot talk to my kids anymore because they have their thing in front of them now. It's going to be sitting on their head instead. What is your vision of the future with AR, and how does Qt even fit in there?
AR, VR is something that we have started looking into 1.5, 2 years ago. There was a lot of hype around the Vision Pro launch. I think there is still a lot of potential on where this is maybe going. AR is a very different use case from VR. So when you are sitting there with your VR headset and are in a fully virtualized environment, I think what we have today is very competitive. We had some very exciting demos here at the event as well. And that's where we have focused our work so far. Now we are switching gears and looking into the AR use case, where we have actually, again, a cross-platform problem with ARKit and AR Core on iOS and on Android respectively, trying to see what APIs are available from the systems in terms of sensory input, sensory data. The device that you have in your hand has an amazing amount of information about your environment, where the objects are, what's moving, what things might be. Collecting that data in such a way that you can actually use it in a meaningful way in your application logic is to some degree an API design challenge and a cross-platform challenge, like I mentioned. So that's where we are looking at. and then you building experiences that are really immersive and compelling and high performant and context aware. That is going to be very interesting, I think, in a mobile world space where you have a lot of computing just on you and with you. And then it also becomes, and that's where it's interesting for us, a tooling problem, a workflow problem. How do you create these experiences? How do you test them? How do you debug them? How do your designers get involved? So even in the VR world today, VR support is something that we can support as a framework feature. But if you actually want to create an experience, I think it's a very different approach than a designer sitting in front of a screen and trying to figure out what will it look like if you're actually in that virtual world. So there are several tooling challenges and opportunities for us, and people creating these experiences. I think that's where the excitement is. I mean, the technology enabling them is there.
And let that be the last words. Thank you very much for joining me here on the second show of the Curious Developer. I hope I wasn't too naive in my questions, and that,
it was lovely.
That you appreciated the time too.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Jesper.
Thank you.